Today's scripture reading is from Genesis chapter 2, verses 15 through 17, and chapter 3, verses 1 through 7. Please feel free to read along by turning to page 2 in the Old Testament portion of your pew Bibles. The Lord God took the man and put him in the Garden of Eden to till it and keep it. And the Lord God commanded the man, "You may freely eat of every tree in the garden, but of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil you shall not eat, for in the day that you eat of it you shall die." Now the serpent was more crafty than any other wild animal that the Lord God had made. He said to the woman, "Did God say, 'You shall not eat from any tree in the garden'?" The woman said to the serpent, "We may eat of the fruit of the trees in the garden, but God said, 'You shall not eat of the fruit of the tree that is in the middle of the garden, nor shall you touch it, or you shall die.' But the serpent said to the woman, 'You will not die, for God knows that when you eat of it, your eyes will be opened, and you will be like God, knowing good and evil.' So when the woman saw that the tree was good for food, and that it was a delight to the eyes, and that the tree was to be desired to make one wise, she took of its fruit and ate. And she also gave some to her husband who was with her, and he ate. Then the eyes of both were opened, and they knew that they were naked, and they sewed fig leaves together and made loincloths for themselves." May the Spirit of wisdom guide our understanding of this scripture.
Amen.
Will you pray with me? It is our prayer, O God, that the words of my mouth and the meditations of our hearts this morning would be pleasing and acceptable to you, for you remain our rock and our Redeemer. Amen. Of all the passages in the Bible that get misquoted and misused, and that have been used in the name of God to harm other people, especially women, the one that we just heard may be at the top of the list. Those of you all who are reading along with Christina may have seen that the subtitle of this story in the NRSV version of the scriptures is called "The First Sin and Its Punishment." We just read the sin part. The punishment part comes later if you'd like to continue to read. But even calling this text the first sin, the original sin, has a way of coloring what is going on here. All that business of the serpent tricking Eve, and then Eve tricking Adam, and then God cursing the woman, and then there's the poor snake, whose reputation has never recovered from the bad press that it received in this story. Sometimes I wonder if it hadn't been for this story in the Bible, maybe today we would be seeing Facebook posts about snakes instead of all those cute posts about cats and dogs. These days, lots of really big churches, and back in the, I guess you'd call them good old days, maybe bad old days, the preachers that you could hear late at night from the megawatt AM radio stations that would come to life as soon as the sun went down, while we were trying to stay awake with a car full of sleepy kids maybe on AM radio, those preachers back in the day got worked up into a lather trying to convince us about how sinful we were, and how sinful the body is, and how sinful sexuality is, and how sinful sometimes women are. All of that sin was wrapped up in this story of Eve being tempted in the garden by the serpent, and then Adam being tempted by Eve. How do we escape this sin according to these late night broadcasts? Well, first, by giving our money to said red-faced, angry-sounding preacher. And of course, second, by putting women in their place and not letting them make the really important decisions, viewing them with some suspicion, etc., etc. Now, I am sure that I do not know the real depth of this story like an Old Testament historian might. But I do know that it is no longer acceptable for people in my profession to use stories like this one or any other stories in the Scriptures to hurt people. That has gone on long enough. It is part of our legacy as Christians, but it has gone on long enough. And I also have a hunch that if we could find a way to step inside stories like these and appreciate them as stories, we would have so much more to learn from them. One way I've come to really appreciate this particular story of the garden, the serpent, and Adam and Eve has been to recall that the great faith traditions out of which ancient Judaism arose, the ancient mythologies of those days, all had stories about sort of a divided God, if you will. Or a God who had been once one, but now was not one anymore. Who had been divided. Now has a second presence, if you will. A less than pleasant second presence. Very common in ancient mythologies to have this sort of divided God. In both Jewish and Christian lore, there is someone or something called an adversary. It comes out of that same tradition. Who might have begun as one of God's highest archangels, a sidekick, a right-hand man, if you will, but who grew skeptical of human nature. In the same way that we grow skeptical about trusting someone who has lied to us, or mistreated us, or hurt us in some way. In mythological tradition, the adversary has soured on people. In this story, the adversary is the snake. Later in Jewish theology, especially around the time of Jesus, the adversary gets renamed. The snake is off the hook. The adversary becomes the Satan. The Satan, which translated from the Hebrew means one who plots against another. Now, over the years, the spicy way to talk about the adversary, or the Satan, has been to personify it and to give it a life out there somewhere. That kind of language has its appeal. There's nothing quite like being able to say, along with Flip Wilson, the devil made me do it. I don't know what came over me. It was someone else's fault. But I kind of have a feeling that the ancient myth about the adversary, and the way that myth has been written into our scriptures as serpent and then the Satan, is really more of an attempt to describe how we ourselves are a mixture of contradictions that all struggle against one another all the time to form who we really are. The divine and the adversary compete for our allegiance. We believe in racial justice, and we are not willing to give up all that much to make it happen. We understand that the odds are that we will never win the lottery, but when we enter the corner store, we feel lucky enough to go ahead and buy a ticket with our milk money. We understand how important it is for our kids or our spouse to have our entire attention all the time, but we just can't resist grabbing for our phone when a message comes in. To be able to choose is to be human. It is what makes us unique among God's creatures, but it is also to be confronted with God and the adversary. And the toughest part is we can't always tell who is who. And I know sometimes it is easy, right? We all know that when we get cut off in traffic, it does us no good when the adversary whispers in our ear to lay on the horn. That's an easy one. And we know what bad advice the adversary is giving us when he invites us to think of bad things happening to the people that we don't happen to like, especially for players on the team that we're rooting against. Sometimes it's a no-brainer. We know not to spend the college fund at the casino. And we know that the adversary is dead wrong when he tries to convince us that our lives are not fully complete without Alexa in our home, turning out the lights when we go to bed. Sometimes it's easy. Other times, to discern between the adversary and the divine, not so much. Other times, it's just a matter of a mouse click, one way or the other. Just a matter of going ahead and saying what's on our mind instead of waiting a minute. Just a matter of hitting send. Just a matter of the difference between, no, I'm good, and sure, why not? That adversary, he was at his very best, wasn't he, when he allegedly talked those police officers in Baltimore City into claiming all that overtime money as their own. These are not bad people, right? We are not bad people, right? No. But we are a messy mix of contradictions. We are filled with God, we are filled with the adversary, and all those contradictions are sitting at the table whenever we do that which makes us most human, which is to decide, to choose. Our dilemma is to try and figure out whose voice is whose. Who is God? Who is the adversary? Sometimes it's easy, other times not so much. This is our dilemma. It's been our dilemma for our entire existence. It's a dilemma that folks wrote stories about. It was so difficult. It's a dilemma that will never go away. But at least we have these stories of Adam and Eve, and the serpent in the garden, Jesus and the Satan in the wilderness, to remind us that when we face one of those decisions that could change our lives, others have faced those same decisions before us. Jesus did, in fact, walk that lonesome valley. And so can